So let's get to it. This is Pleiades, head writer for Treasure Box Press, here with the amazing Seann Bowe.
How's it going?
Amazing. With song credits on the iconic Miyavi. Also, I just got to say this, Grammy-nominated producer and songwriter. Got to shout that out to my guy right here.
Hey.
And honestly, the amount of credits and things that you have with regards to everything that you do songwriting, you do producing. At a certain point, I was looking through your credits, you had things in there along the lines of programming. And we'll get to that because I'm very interested in those specific things, just because I've always been interested in just like the ins and outs and like the different mechanisms of people when somebody has to be a song producer, somebody has to be the producer, director, or not director, but songwriter, all that. So it's very interesting. We'll get to that. But before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Seann Bowe. I'm a songwriter and I'm an artist. I'm a producer. I kind of do as much as I can in music. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not very good at talking about myself.
You're good.
I'm in love with Japan. And I try and work as much in Japanese music as I can possibly. And I've made it kind of my mission to be an international songwriter and artist and producer and not so much just stay in the States.
This shows. Are you classically taught or did you pick up everything on your own?
It's kind of a mix of both. So I started in choir. I was in the Duke Boys Choir in North Carolina, and that's how I learned to sing, and just surrounded by classical music. And then I picked up the violin. And so those two instruments were kind of the basis for my classical upbringing. But then when I got into college, I kind of rebelled against it, and I didn't want anything to do with it. I sold my violin for an audio interface, and I started doing producing and songwriting more. Mm-hmm. And that's when I just kind of threw all the classical training out the window.
Fair enough. Hey, you have that foundation. So after that, I figured you probably have everything to just build off of that. You said you were a choir in North Carolina. I thought you were native to Milwaukee, or did you do a lot of moving around?
Yeah, so I did a lot of moving around. I spent first 14 years of my life in North Carolina in the South. And then from there, from 14 to 25, I was in Milwaukee. And then I just recently moved to LA.
I said, that is a big move. Is there a culture shock or anything?
Which one?
Actually, I mean,
they're all culture shocks. Yeah.
That different from all of them. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, pretty much.
When you first moved to California, was that very recent? Or, because I got to say this, you landed a music deal pretty early on in your life. So that's impressive at all. Just period. Was that the first move was that the first thing that kind of spurred you moving to California, or was that just kind of vaguely related?
Oh, absolutely. So it actually started me in songwriting too, because I had co-writing rather, because I had been songwriting and producing by myself up until that point. And when I got signed, the first thing they wanted to do was put me in rooms with other writers and make more songs for the album. So they were flying me out to LA all the time. And, every kid's dream when you're a musician, you're like, I want to go to LA. I want to go to LA. It's the land of dreams, right? So I was just enamored with Los Angeles. And then as my career progressed, I just made it a goal to move here.
What is that like when so obviously when you're a part of a record label, they have certain expectations of you, things like that. When it comes to songwriting, because this is very interesting to me, there was found a quote where you were talking about having you were in New Berlin and you were just driving around listening to a Wiz Khalifa beat, and then you just started writing about it. And it's so the idea of you being in a room with other writers, me personally, it's always difficult finding your creative voice and then working with other people. When you're doing songs and you're writing for other people, do you write for them in mind, or do you just go off of what you're feeling? And how does that compare to when, say, you're the artist and then other writers are like on there with you?
Right, right. So I try and find a marriage of both. Like I want to go where they're going, obviously, but I want to do something that I'm passionate about. Like if I'm not feeling it, if it's not based off something that I'm feeling as well, I don't feel like it'll be universal to the artist, and I don't think it'll do well for them because it's just comes off as fake. And I really do believe that people can smell that. Like they can really tell when music is inauthentic. So I try and find something I'm passionate about, and then I try and see if it matches. And if it does, I go from there.
Have you ever gotten into a position where, say, your creative differences kind of like start not butting heads, but you kind of come to a head and you have to decide this way or that way?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, we'll go home sometimes with two bounces of a song and it has two different choruses. And then we just tell each other, like, we'll talk about it later, but we need to decide which chorus is the best chorus. I just recently had this happen with an artist I'm working with. He had two verses. He's an amazing rapper. His name's Toby. Please check him out. And
All right.
he had two verses on this new song that we're working on. And one was like really, really fast and like skilled, but like it was hard to understand for the beat. And then the other one was kind of slowed down, but it wasn't very exciting. And I could tell like he was more excited about the fast beat. So we went home and I was like, let's just show all our friends, let's hang on and chill with this. And then, in the end, we decided to go with one of the verses. And so, yeah, you butt heads a lot, but it's like half the battle with songwriting is psychology. I feel like it's about really being able to find multiple times in a day a compromise to something and really work with different people's passions and moods, because when you're dealing with music, you're dealing with people's feelings and really deep feelings. So it can get kind of hairy, and to learn how to navigate that was definitely something that I had to learn.
Do you ever walk into the creative process like while it's already mid in progress?
Oh yeah.
That just seems like so strange to me, because I mean, the entire world of it is just so fascinating. When you wind up walking into a project that's already in progress, what is that like compared to if you're like on board right from the beginning?
Well, there's a level of respect that you have to come in with. You're coming in and, for example, they just don't have a chorus and the rest of the song's done. But you have to really sit down and take in what they've done so far. You can't just come in and write whatever you feel. There's this level of respect that people have already half built the house. They put in the work. They're bloodied up. And you're coming in to, like, get them out of the trenches,
Right.
So, yeah, I would say just knowing where your place is and not overstepping boundaries. Like, if someone asked me to do something specifically, like, for example, that chorus thing I was talking about, I wouldn't come in and be like, I didn't think your verse was very strong. I wouldn't come in and be like, I feel like the production could be better. Like, I'm just going to do the chorus thing and I'm going to listen to what you guys say, and then I'm going to get out of the way.
On that note, there's a lot of like nuances to engineering songs and everything, which, I mean, engineers, that's an entirely other section. But for the uninitiated, if somebody was to explain what a music producer does versus songwriter, artist, how would you explain that?
Well, the songwriter kind of builds the song itself, the melody and the chords. And I would say that the producer builds the world of the song. So they're going in there, they're choosing the instruments, they're choosing the arrangements, they're adding all the effects, the whooshes, all the exciting things that take the song from just a piano and a melody, and turn it into a true experience. I think that's what producers do.
Has it changed at all since you first got into producing?
It's gotten easier. It's gotten way easier. And I think with that, like, we've gotten way more creative music out of it,
Yeah.
There's things like Splice and Arcade where you can readily just go get half a song and have it almost finished. And you know, some might see that as cheating, and I just see it as a way for us to get our ideas down faster. And it's really shown in the music that comes out, because the music that comes out now is like, you can tell it's all pure passion, and it's almost done quicker, you know.
One of the best way that I've heard, or this is an argument that I always see, is people will, like in hip hop, people will compare beats in like the 90s, like old Wu-Tang beats, old Nas beats, all that, to current day things. And it's like, you literally had to recreate the wheel before.
Right.
So that's super interesting. When you have, so the producer almost like is like this a grand orchestrator, right?
Right.
So at what point is it that does the lyrics do the lyrics and the melodies and all that get done and then the producer comes in afterwards? Or does it ever happen where you have to, like, the producer would be like, hey, this isn't quite right, can you go back, give me something else, and then you wind up tweaking things? Or like, is there
Oh,
like a
all the
chain of
time.
command?
There's not really a chain of command. Everyone's equal in the room, I would say. But yeah, like, definitely I would say, more often than not, if a producer isn't feeling something on their beat, they'll say something and they'll have you change it. But yeah, a lot of times songwriters will come in with completed songs and just want a producer to produce it out. But in my experience, in most things, we're doing it simultaneously. So the songwriter is finding the chords, the producer is putting synths to those chords and building out the beat. And as the beat is being made, then the songwriters are sitting in the back and they're making verse melodies and pre-chorus melodies and all this stuff. So it's kind of just this give and take, and you're working back and forth. And then at the end of the day, you're kind of staring at this thing, and then you can kind of go and be like, well, next session, let's get a better chorus or something like that. Yeah.
On that note, would you say that, I mean, in your experience, do you do a whole lot more like, well, I guess right now the situation's kind of flipped on its head, but up until recently,
Right.
would you say you've done more studio sessions with everybody in the room, or a lot of like everybody has their parts, they'll email it to each other and then kind of like stitch it together?
Usually in the room. In person is the best way to write. That's why this quarantine's been pretty crazy.
I was gonna say, the way you're describing it, it feels like you would almost have to have everybody there, because when
Right.
one thing changes, it's like everything else also kind of like switches up, it seems like.
Yeah, and there's this magic in the room, you know, like, like the producer is making something, it sparks an idea with one of the writer starts writing something. Like, it's this back and forth that even like a little bit of lag on a Zoom call can just mess up, you know.
There's been people talking, the comedians trying to do like Zoom like routines. That
Right.
delay kills it. Like, it's
Oh,
just
I
the
haven't seen
timing
it.
and everything. It's just no.
I
It's
love
sad.
stand up.
I do too. I really wish we get it again at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
This was a big question I had. I'm going to point out a specific example. Madness,
Okay.
All That Remains. You are
Yeah.
credited as a not only keyboards, choir, chorus, composer. You also did programming.
Yeah.
What all
Yeah.
does that entail?
So it's not as exciting as you might think. I'm not sitting there on Python, you know, making the beat go in and out according to a script. But programming is finding additional, especially in the rock world, it's something kind of unique to the rock world. But it's going in with the beat, or, you know, with the finished track, and adding synths and effects and things like that that help accentuate. Like, for example, you can't hear it, but with all the guitars in that song, I have a synth playing with every guitar part. So it helps beef up all the parts and make things sound more full.
Is that more of a recent thing in the music world, or is that just because of like technology's advanced, or is that just something that's always been there and normal people just don't hear about it as often?
Recent is in, I would say, like the 2000s it
Mm-hmm.
started. Um, with like, you know, Pro Tools and things like that, being able to add synths over existing tracks like became essential, you know.
See, I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I saw programming, I was like, chiptunes, and then like I just
Yeah.
like started getting like all these like bells and whistles. I'm like, I need to know, you know.
Yeah.
um,
So sorry to disappoint.
no, that's interesting. That's pretty much what I was thinking, anyways. I just,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
like not like, you know, how you go to cons sometimes and they'll like plug in a Game Boy and somehow have like an entire DJ mix off of it.
Right, yeah. Those are cool.
Going back a little bit, when you collab with people, like, do you wind up getting like, is it your manager who just kind of tosses stuff at you? Do you hear about it and then you kind of say like, hey, can I hop onto this? Like, what's it like
Um,
getting those connections and kind of just collaborating with people in general?
yeah, I mean, people are in and out of studios all the time. So you'll just be working in a session and someone will come in, pop in, hear what you're doing, and the next thing you know, you have a session with them. So it's like, it's really just about being in rooms and doing work every day, and the connections and things like that and people to work with, they kind of just come organically through doing that. I've had a couple people reach out on Instagram. Those are interesting sessions, but because you don't know this person at all. But I would say a personal connection is really important, especially if you're going to dive into something as personal as a songwriting session.
What
You
was
know?
the most unexpected collab that you did? Like somebody you didn't even expect, and then you just wound up just doing a session with them.
Miyavi, absolutely, 100%. So I was working in a studio with my friend Lenny, who is Miyavi's producer. He's produced like 5 albums with him already. They're an inseparable team, and he had just started working with Miyavi, and he, you know, Lenny and I had been working for a while, and he knew that I spoke a little Japanese, and I'm talking like when I look back now, it it was so small, and he's like, you know, I'm working with this Japanese artist, and you told me you speak a little Japanese. Do you want to come in and help out? And I said, yeah, of course. And the night before, I'm just like going through my dictionary, and I'm trying to just like remember everything from high school. And so I go in, and the chemistry was immediate, and I didn't expect this at all. I thought I would be translating, but you know, it turns out they wanted me there as a songwriter as well. And the first song Miyavi and I ever wrote together was a song called Firebird, which ended up doing tremendously well in Japan. And we wrote 2 songs that day, and ever since then, you know, I've written 40 songs with Miyavi now. But yeah, ever since then, it's just been, that's the team, is Lenny, Miyavi, and I. And that came out of absolutely nowhere. And just because I took Japanese in high school for a little bit, you know what I mean?
That's so cool. So wait. So he told you it was Miyavi before, or did he was just like, hey, so and so, and then you show up as, oh, it's Miyavi.
Right, yeah. That was exactly the case.
Oh my god.
I had no idea.
Is it so y'all did a session, was this in Japan or was this in LA?
This was in LA.
Okay. All right. Is it I gotta ask, is the way that he runs his sessions any different from like American artists or like Western artists? Because it like I
Um,
always wonder about like cultural differences, you know?
I would say less cultural and more his instrument, his guitar, it changes the way that the session goes. You know what I mean? He really communicates with his guitar. So any melodies he hears, anything like that, it all comes through his guitar. So in that sense, it's really unique to write with him.
I was gonna say, like, so for the songwriting and everything, I mean, I'm actually not super familiar with like Miyabi's English, but I gotta expect that there's some amount of like, I don't know, like mixing Japanese, English, and all that into songwriting. He's probably
Right.
used to it, but were you nervous at all? Did you just start
Uh,
writing, or were you kind of like waiting for him to give you like, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for?
I definitely kept my head down, and I was just like, I'm just gonna follow everyone's lead and do whatever's going on today, you know, and just do my best kind of thing. So He definitely knows the way he wants to run the session.
That's good. That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you always like want somebody to kind of have an idea steering the boat, right?
Right, exactly. And he always knows what to do. So
How is it when you're doing your own solo projects compared to like hopping on to somebody else's project and collaborating?
it's free. It's free. It's really fun. You know, I'll just sit there with headphones on and work for 8 hours straight and forget to eat, and then
Same.
have a song for the album. Um, but I I love co-writing so much. It almost gets lonely to write by myself sometimes. So
Mm.
I do it kind of. I have to have like I'm never gonna be one of those guys that's just like, okay, bye guys. I just booked this cabin up in the mountains. I'm gonna go write an album for a month. I would just die not being able to see anyone. So I just kind of sprinkle it through the days. Whenever I need to rest, that's when I'll make a song for me.
Aw.
Yeah.
Is there any certain way that you prefer doing your sessions, so to speak? Like, what is your creative process kind of when you're just in the very, very starting stages of there's this primordial concept or like this thing that you just, hey, maybe I'll turn this into something, or like, do you start with an
Right.
outline, or do you literally just like whatever strikes the moment?
Whatever strikes the moment. I mean, my ideal session usually, you sit down. We'll say there's an artist in the session. You sit down with the artist and you talk with them for about an hour before you even get to the song, and you kind of try and find the title or the concept, just based on what's going on in their life. And then once you find that title, the rest kind of like sprinkles in. Like you can already hear what the chords should be. You can already kind of hear what the production should sound like. And then you just start hammering it out. And I love working with producers who like, you just like behind them on their shoulder and you're just going back and forth and you're like, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then, it's just this back and forth of cooking, and then, the write the rest of the song. But yeah, I think my ideal sessions usually consist of really easily being able to find that title, that concept, having an artist who's honest enough to give us something that's juicy, and then having a producer that I have a great back and forth with, because like as soon as the track's done, I can do the melody and stuff and we can get that all hammered out. But I love being a part of the track, and I love working with people who are like really about collaboration.
You love writing. You love writing songs. You love collaborating,
Yes.
and things like that, right? Um, how much? So when you write your songs, do you
Yes.
do all your own songwriting? And not
Yes.
okay.
For
All
my
right.
stuff,
Mhm.
I've collabed with producers on the tracks before. So my song Daydreamer, I collabed on, and a couple songs on this new album, I have some producer collaborations. But for the most part, I've done most of it all myself.
Do you prefer it that way, or, I mean, yeah, do you prefer that way?
Yes, but I'm trying to explore it. My artist stuff has always been more personal, and so I find it really hard to let go and work with others on it. But I think, album one is done. I'm working on album two, and I think for album two, what I really want to explore more is kind of letting go of the reins and let people show me what they think Seann Bowe is. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah.
To get more ideas for sounds and fun stuff. So
Compared to songwriting, do you have less of a hold on things like production, things like melodies, or is it all pretty much like this is my baby?
it's all pretty much this is my big. I would say melody is my specialty, but as far as like the lyrics and the track go, they're just as important. If you don't have the world, if you don't have the story, the song falls flat. You know, I would say lyrics are where I struggle the most. Um, but I think that's everybody.
There's sometimes like trouble with on the back of album covers, a lot of tracks you'll see there's like infinite amounts of like people in the credits. Is it really
Right.
like, you'll have a studio session with like that many people, or is it literally anybody who touches the song has to get a credit? Because it feels like
Well,
that sometimes.
yeah, I mean, that is kind of how the industry works. If someone comes in and you send them a beat and they redid the bass on the beat, they get a songwriting credit. Like that's kind of the new world we're in. And song, like especially huge songs are getting passed around a lot because people just are chasing perfection. So I think at the end of the day, when you have those songs that you've just hammered and hammered and hammered, you're going to have 10, 12 writers on it because someone wrote the first chorus and then you scrapped that chorus, but you kept their verses. And then, you know, you brought in a whole nother team to rewrite the song and you kept their chorus, you know, stuff like that.
Like in my mind, I'm imagining like an album that maybe like got pushed back a couple times. Does that
Yeah.
ever, like, where like it might be like a year or something, and like they
Oh
keep
yeah.
like editing it because like it's not quite right, like, does that happen?
Oh, shit gets, excuse my language. Stuff gets,
By all means.
oh, okay. Shit
Go
gets
for it.
A&R to the ground, very often. You know, people just, they're chasing a hit and they don't know what it sounds like. And they'll just sit there and change and change and change and change songs. I've seen records sit for 2 years because the A&Rs are just not sold on the songs, and watch artists just like have no momentum for that time. They're just sitting there writing and writing. It's terrible. But you know, that album, this particular album that took 2 years, ended up doing amazingly. So I can't really argue with it. That person has a complete career now. But
Hey.
yeah, it was worth the wait on that one. I would just say it happens to a lot of records, and especially young signs. Like when someone gets excited about someone on SoundCloud and they sign an artist, but they don't really know what they are. They just know that they like the sound and it's popular.
Yeah.
And then they just spend years chasing down a single and it ends up, it doesn't happen. So,
God, that's tragic.
yeah.
But on that note, I do have to ask, your first outing was a little bittersweet because you got your deal and then like immediately, or like, what was the time frame where like the
Was it?
label just shut down?
Yeah, it was like a year. We got a year of being signed, and then I would say then we got the news that the label was going under. That was crazy.
Like, was it hard to, I mean, I can only imagine it must have been hard keeping motivated after that.
Oh yeah, it was, especially trying to get 6 people in a band to stay motivated and not leave the band. But you know, we had such young energy. We were just all about it. Like we were just gonna keep driving no matter what. Um, and the band did end up going on for about another year afterwards. Um, but yeah, I really think that was such a blow, and it was hard to recover from it. It really did end up just like taking us in the end, you know.
In retrospect, I'm not 100% if they're just completely defunct. I do have to ask though. Young signs sometimes not the best business sense at that age, just because like you don't know a whole lot about the business world, all those things,
Right.
right? Would you say like, do you think like you would have like the deal would have been fine otherwise, or were you just so excited that you were just signing whatever? Because honestly, at my age, if I was young, I would probably just
Yeah.
sign anything that they gave me.
Right. I mean, we had our lawyers go back and forth for 8 months. So like we really had that contract looked at. I think the biggest problem was that when the label crashed, when they got rid of Universal Motown, the idea was that they were going to send all the acts that were on that label. And we're talking about Drake and Lil Wayne. They had Young Money under
Oh my god.
Universal Motown, just all dropped. And basically the choice was between Island, Def Jam, and Republic. And they were sending all of the artists that had gotten dropped from the Universal Motown roster to those labels. But the problem was those labels asked the same thing, and that was, what are the sales numbers on these albums? But we hadn't put out our album yet. We didn't have numbers. We didn't have any proof. And this happened with a lot of young signs because, like I said, those albums hadn't come out. They've been A&R. So because of that, I think that was the biggest problem, is like maybe I should have pushed harder for us to release things while we were under our contract before we even put out the album. But besides that, yeah, I don't think we could have done anything differently. I think it was really just the economic crash of 2008 that messed things up.
I'll do that. Is that more or less like the advice you would offer like new signs in the modern day?
Is to, yeah, make sure you get a release out quick. Like, because, yeah, because you can sit, like, and make sure you have time frames. If you can, like, contracts, you can just do whatever the hell you want, really. So if you want to get creative, put time frames in, you know, be like, we have to have a release out within a year, and see if they'll agree to that. But like, my biggest piece of advice to young signs is use a lawyer. They'll know what to do. And don't use your friend's lawyer. Find a music lawyer, you know.
I've heard tragic stories where like they'll use, say, the label's lawyer, and it's like
Right,
the label's lawyer, with all due respect, might be a great person, but they don't have your best interest in mind. So,
right.
like,
They're not on your retainer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, so you're working on a new project. You're working on album 2 right now. Did you start the process pre-COVID or during COVID?
I finished album 1 in March, during COVID. And then, yeah, album 2, still COVID. So two COVID albums on the way.
Hey, it's a mark of the times, man.
Yeah,
Has it
really
like
is.
influenced? Is there like any influences like in the actual like melodies, into the lyrics or anything? If you can give us a little bit of a dish.
I mean, I've tried really hard not to write about quarantine, because I feel like once quarantine's over, it's going to be so cheesy. But I do have a song coming out in about 2 weeks that is about quarantine, because right now the borders to Japan are closed and I can't go back. And I just got my visa. So kind of a sucky situation. I was really feeling something, so I wrote a song about it. It's called Back to Japan.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'll be putting that out in about 2 weeks. And that is about quarantine. That is 100% about quarantine.
Like you say that, but like you're absolutely right that everybody's going to be talking about it. I feel like we're all just waiting for the floodgates of quarantine and COVID related documentaries,
right?
Netflix series, like everything.
It's coming.
I think at this point, if anything comes out, we're all just too traumatized to even look at it. It's like wait until we're done, and then we'll come back to this.
Right.
With regards to, I'm just hopping all around here, just kind of like,
okay.
Right. So for Happy Hour, right?
Yeah.
Did you hop onto that prior, or like, how did that go? Like with your entry into like the contributing to that song?
So that song was originally written with my friend Chris. And we had sat in that track for, I don't know, like 2 years. And then randomly we get an email saying like, Rivers from Weezer heard this track and he loves it and he wants to, do his thing on it. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. So we sent him over the track. And like within a week back, we got Happy Hour. And it was like, this is so sick. Like, I'm so glad, like, he used some of the stuff that we had on the track, and like, it was just cool to work with someone like that. And then the song just kind of sat. It was supposed to go on the album before Pacific Daydream, the White Album, I believe. It was supposed to go on the White Album, and then they're like, guys, I'm so sorry, Happy Hour got pulled. And we're, kind of sad about that. Like, was like, oh man, I had a song with Weezer, it's never coming out. But they're like, there's still hope, it could come out on other releases. So I kept my head up, and I remember like driving, because I worked at JCPenney for a while to make ends meet, and I remember driving home, just listening to that song and just being like, this is why I'm a songwriter, I'm gonna do it, And then, we'll fast forward like maybe another year and a half of not hearing anything. And then I get a call from Chris, and he's like, yo, I just heard back and they're going to put Happy Hour on the new album. So we got to get all that stuff, worked out. And I was so ecstatic. But that song was it was a long wait. It was around for a while.
How did you get the news about the nomination?
Man, so I found out through a news article. I was in Japan at my girlfriend's house, and I just looked at my phone, and I saw the Grammy nomination. So I was just going through them just casually. Like I didn't think I was going to see myself on there. And I got to rock, and I saw that Weezer's Pacific Daydream was listed, and it didn't click. And I scrolled past it, and then I was just like, whoa, wait. So I scroll back up, and I'm like, I'm on that album. And I was like, no way. So I called my manager at the time, and I was like, yo, am I Grammy nominated? Is this real? Like, does this count? And he calls me back. He's like, yeah, man, you're Grammy nominated. Holy shit. And I was like, that's amazing, dude. But it was, that was an amazing day.
But did you get to go to the thing, or is it like only core parts of the group get to actually go to the show?
I was in Japan. So
never mind. Okay, then
yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was gonna say, I can't even imagine what it's like to be in that position. Just getting the nomination, were you holding your breath to like get that award, or at that point were you just like you didn't even care what happened after that?
I kind of let go. I was like, I know me, I'm super competitive, and I was like, if I let myself be like, I'm gonna win this, we're gonna win this, it's just gonna take me over. So I kind of took a deep breath, and I was like, I'm gonna let go, and whatever happens, happens. And we lost to Greta Van Fleet, but it didn't hurt as much as if I was really like about it,
I mean, so you're saying it didn't hurt. Was there like a part of you that was like a little disappointed? Were you disheartened at all?
Oh, of course, man. But I still believe this isn't my last one. So, hopefully I get back up to bat again. So,
if you had coming out of that, what was it that like got you more motivated or like to get back on track? Was there any sort of period where you kind of had to do self-reflection and then kind of figure out how to pull yourself out of that? Just because I know like a lot of people,
all the time,
a lot of creatives,
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
It's just, you just got to work through it, whatever it is, because it rears its head all the time. Therapy helps. Therapy is number one recommendation to songwriters who like sad music is get a therapist, because talking through that stuff, it's amazing, and it can really help, and it can make your life better. So
do you ever feel like a thing where actually this is a better question, is there a certain procedure for like when you're a songwriter, right? And maybe you don't get top billing on a credit for a song,
right?
Like the entire concept of like ghostwriting, or not even like ghostwriting, because a lot of tracks aren't even like completely written by somebody else. It's like, you'll have certain parts, they'll get clipped in, they'll do all that. Are there certain arrangements where depending on your role in the song, you might not actually get creditation, or does it depend on your music contract, things like that?
I've had it happen a couple times. A lot of the times, and they do this a lot in Asian countries, it's called a buyout. And it's basically you're saying like they'll pay you X amount of dollars for you to give up your credit and your royalties. So there's stuff like that I've experienced. I've never been a ghost producer on a song. But yeah, for the most part, you'll be compensated, and, people work it out with you. But usually, there's a conversation.
If they buy you out, does that mean like you just can't have any credit to it whatsoever? Like no knowledge of it be public ever?
Right. Like, well, it's not like they make you sign an NDA. Like, I can still talk about the songs I've been bought out on. But my credit is not on those songs. You know what I mean? If someone looks up the song, it won't say written by Seann Bowe.
What is is there like a thing where it depends on which song you might be more likely to be able, like, to be okay with being bought out? Or is it, or like, what's your stance on that kind of thing?
I mean, if I know the song's going to be crazy successful, I might not do the buyout. But it's really a situational basis, like you're saying. It's like you just need to figure out like, and if it's with an artist that I really admire and I'm really proud of the credit, I'm not going to do the buyout because like I want to be able to say I worked with that person. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, like, I know for me, like my ego or like my just like what if would just be going crazy because sometimes there's tracks that hit and that nobody expect to catch on, and then they just pop off. And in my mind, I would just be like, "But this might be the one. This might be the thing." And I swear to God, if I miscalculate this, I'm going to hate myself.
Right. Yeah. And that's always the hard choice. Is like, is this going to take off or not?
Is on that note, because of that, is how does ego ever like play into the whole process, like with regards to credits and like putting your name out there?
All the time, man. There's so many egos in the room, but I try and keep it really simple. I learned really early that the more ego you try and put into your business, the more bullshit you're gonna get out. So really, whoever comes in a room with me, if there's 3 writers, we split it 3 ways. If there's 2 writers, we split it 2 ways. I'm not going to fight and be like, well, I wrote the chorus, so give me an extra 10%. Like, it's just ridiculous because it all comes out in the wash. We're all going to write more songs together. We're all going to have more releases like this. It's not anyone in the room's last cut unless that person is just atrocious, you know?
You mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I was trying to figure out the most tactful way of mentioning it. Before what I mentioned, like, bunch of people in the studio, all that. I've heard stories of literally, like, even if it's just somebody in there and they just have like one suggestion, people will actually go like person by person, like, okay, what's your cut? What's your percent? What's your percent and all that? And I'm like, wait, if one person has like one comment, they get a percent, and they're just by being in the room, that's crazy.
Yeah. I've met people who are literally just vibe guys. Like they're just people that, some producer who's up there loves having around, and they just give a cut to that person every time just so they can hang out in the studio.
Damn.
And they don't write anything. They're just vibe guys. Yeah.
I thought that was a myth. Like, I thought that was just one of those caricatures you see in TV shows. And I'm just like, what? That's an actual thing?
Get paid to be a vibe, yeah.
I'm living my wrong life right now. Wow. Okay.
You need a vibe guy.
I need to be a vibe guy.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right. So looks like we're rounding out about the hour, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Thanks so much for being here.
Of course.
And I have, so again, what do you have coming up so we can plug you up on everything?
I have a song called Back to Japan coming out in 2 weeks, which we're using my phone, so I don't know the date.
Me too.
Hold on. My song Back to Japan comes out August 20th. Please check that out. It's all about quarantine, so it'll be not cheesy for just a couple more months.
Woo!
And then, please check me out on Instagram at SCANNBOWE. And that's on Twitter and YouTube as well. And then please check out my metal band, The Shadow Service, at Cult of TSS on all platforms. We're releasing music very soon for that too.
And I do have just one last question that we're trying to go ahead and just have a little fun time. If you had anybody to put on your like wise dead spirit council, like somebody who's passed, who you would just like have as like your spirit, just kind of like mentor when, like in The Lion King, when Mufasa comes in from the skies and just offers advice and all that, who would you have?
Sorry, my headphones just died, so I'm just.
Oh, you're good.
Looks like we cut the hour at a good time. Okay, my wise dead spirit council. Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson.
Second Michael Jackson.
Second
really?
Michael
Jackson, yes. We're
That's
2 for
amazing.
2. I gotta admit, I absolutely agree. Not gonna lie.
I think he'd be a good mentor.
Listen, having that advice, oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. But it's been great having you. Again,
Thanks, man. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll make sure we plug it. We'll link all your socials down below in the description too. So we make sure we get all that popping